During the Clone Wars, Count Dooku and General Grievous were able to rally many citizens around the galaxy who were completely sick of the Republic's corruption and disgusting treatment of the Outer Rim worlds in enough numbers to begin a war. During the war, one Separatist commander looked up to Grievous so highly that he eventually tried to be like him in every way with the help of a mad scientist, including copying his body and wielding multiple lightsabers. So, let's find out why this Separatist scientist literally tried to turn a fallen Separatist commander into General Grievous. This is part 5 of the Vader plus Aphra series, so if you haven't seen part 4, make sure you check that out, as the story won't fully add up without seeing the previous part. You can find that in the pinned comment down below. So the story begins right where we left off last time, with Darth Vader facing down the non-force sensitive creations of the mad scientist Cylo, who were created to replace Vader as Palpatine's Sith apprentice. Cylo believed that the Force was obsolete and that Vader himself needed to be replaced. Because of this, Palpatine allowed Cylo to begin creating and finding these non-Force sensitive abominations, who were enhanced in other ways, to fight Vader and see who should become the true Sith apprentice. As Vader is about to begin battling Cylo's creations, Palpatine watches on in anger, warning Cylo that he has been working on this plan for many years and it would be unwise for him to disappoint his Emperor after all of this time. Cylo simply responds, "Of course, my Emperor," before displaying his first set of candidates to defeat Vader, the Astarte twins. Cylo tells Palpatine that their family funded much of his early work and that these two twins have had the best genetic tweaks and combat training ever since he began the program. The two twins begin to surge forward at Vader, both attacking the Dark Lord at once, but they are very quickly blocked at every turn. As Vader and the twins continue their fierce battle, Cylo tells his Emperor that ever since their formative years, he has been teaching them lessons which could roughly be paraphrased as, "Hail Palpatine." He was brainwashing them from the moment they could even think for themselves. The twins eventually used the power of fire to try to stun Vader and catch him off guard, but the Dark Lord of the Sith is not going to stumble at such a simple trick, and instead uses the Force to blast it back in their faces. Cylo then continues his rant, telling Palpatine how the two were once mere humans, but are now closer to complete cyborgs, and Palpatine is happy that he will have a spare if one happens to be killed, but is very quickly bored and wants to see more. Following this, Cylo unleashes his finest Trandoshan warrior on Darth Vader, before he very quickly swings his sharp claws at him. This Trandoshan warrior, however, has some pretty crazy modifications, including ones that could be considered dangerously inhumane. The Trandoshan has a cyber animate modification installed into its brain, which allows Cylo to guide its instincts and, in a way, control its every move. On top of this, the beast feels absolutely no emotion, no pain, or literally anything other than what the Emperor desires. Once again, however, Vader is very quickly able to dispatch this beast, plunging his red lightsaber right into its shoulder. Palpatine is slightly more impressed with this sample, but Cylo is not one to dwell, very quickly moving on to his next subject. Next is a heavily modified woman named Toulon, who surprisingly wasn't born and bred to be a warrior. At her core, she is a scientist who has been capable of exploring very exotic sciences and high-level R&D work for many weapon systems. This piques Palpatine's interest greatly, as the second Death Star is currently being constructed. The incredible thing about this crazy scientist is that her intelligence is not stored in one location like her brain, but is instead distributed through a series of droids which are directly controlled by her brain. On top of this, she doesn't only see through her eyes, but also through these droids, giving her a very large perspective on the world in front of her and an incredible intelligence. As Cylo was explaining this to the Emperor, Toulon unleashes a barrage of fire on Darth Vader through her many droids, but Vader is far too quick in the Force to even take a single hit, instead deflecting them right back at her. Cylon then tells Palpatine that Toulon Voidgazer was a genius before he even enhanced her, and her new topic of research under Palpatine's leadership will be revenge. Palpatine calls this charming, but very quickly wants to see the next candidate. The next candidate on the list shocks both Palpatine and Vader. Cylo very quickly explains that this Mon Calamari is the infamous Commander Carbon, who served the Separatist Alliance during the Clone Wars. Sadly, his ship was destroyed near the end of the war, and he suffered considerable injuries that simply weren't treatable. Because of this, he was kept barely alive on life support for a whole 18 years. The cruelty of keeping him alive on life support for 18 years when he's only moments away from death is pretty horrific. And some of you may have noticed that this story is also very similar to how Grievous himself became a cyborg. So these two pretty much have an exact parallel story. When Cylo explains this, the Grievous pretender ignites his purple and blue lightsabers, spinning them around like his idol did during the war. Cylo then adds that Commander Carbon spent the last 2 years becoming cybernetically enhanced, and that both Carbon and Cylo himself were great admirers of the late General Grievous, but Vader already knew exactly what he was facing. He remembers Grievous all too well from the Battle of Coruscant. Commander Carbon then leaps into the air and attempts to take Vader down from the high ground, but Vader simply blocks his whirling attacks. Following this, Palpatine is sick of the 1v1 attacks and wants to see every single one of Cylo's candidates fight each other at once to see who will be the last man standing. The group all eventually begin a ferocious battle, with Vader coming only moments away from being defeated by the Trandoshan cyborg before he is suddenly saved by Morit with his yellow lightsaber. Vader tells the young twin that he will not forget what he did today, but Morit says the only reason he saved Vader was because he's less of a threat than the other candidates. Vader, however, has no interest in his excuses and is very angry that he didn't get the chance to kill the Trandoshan himself. Honestly, after seeing all of this, it must be pretty horrible for Vader to have thrown away his entire old life with the Jedi and killed younglings to become Palpatine's apprentice in order to save Padme, just to have his master consider others for the role. Following this, Palpatine agrees to take on all of these modified candidates, believing he can eventually find a use for them. He warns them, however, if they make even a single mistake or start turning on each other, they will be severely punished. Following this, Vader absolutely snaps at his master, calling the candidates who fought against him abominations. But Palpatine harshly responds, telling Vader that he is forgetting who is the master and who is the student, and that it is his role to learn everything his master knows. Palpatine then absolutely roasts Vader more than the Mustafar lava already did, saying, "You stand there more metal than man and talk of abominations? Were it not for my open mind, you would not even be here." Palpatine then continues to tell Vader how much he disappointed him with his failure on Mustafar, which leads Vader to realize something absolutely horrifying. Cylo has been training these twins for 20 years, which means that from the very start, Palpatine was already considering replacing Vader. Palpatine, however, responds to this by saying that the dark side is strength and operates on a survival of the fittest formula. If the twins defeat Vader, they are stronger and deserve to take Vader's position. Following this, Palpatine tells Vader that after he gave him his Sith name, he proved himself worthy of holding it and is certain he will prove himself worthy once again against his competition. Following this, Vader returns to his ship and Dr. Aphra immediately demands to know what happened, but Vader is so badly traumatized by the whole situation that he begs Aphra for silence and tells her to launch the ship immediately. Aphra is shocked by this, but they very quickly jet off, and Aphra once again calls out to Lord Vader. Vader warns her that this is not a good time to bait him like she usually does, and this time she understands that it won't go well for her if she does. Instead, she gives him a message from the bounty hunter Boba Fett, who has caught up with the boy that Vader is desperately searching for. Sometime later, Vader meets up with Boba and Boba gives him the unfortunate news that he has lost the boy. Vader is disappointed by this, but Boba brushes this off by saying that the boy just got lucky. Vader quickly moves on from this and asks Boba if he has brought anything of value. Boba says, not much, just his name, Skywalker. This immediately sends Vader into a series of painful flashbacks, beginning with Padme telling him that she's pregnant from Revenge of the Sith, before going forward to when he asked Palpatine if Padme was alright and he told Vader that in his anger, he killed her. This angers Vader so badly that he begins to crack the glass in front of him, which is just barely separating him from the dark void of space. Immediately after this, Vader demands a hologram communication with his Emperor, and Palpatine very quickly senses that Vader is holding great anger inside of him. Palpatine then asks Vader if he has some proud, defiant words for his master, or if he is wise enough to know his place. Vader, however, admits that he is deeply angered, and that this is the reason Palpatine found him from a young age in the first place, but assures his master that he will not fail, and that he understands their dynamic precisely. And to end the story, Vader is given one final series of traumatic flashbacks, this time to his confrontation with Padme on Mustafar, and to her death, as well as seeing Luke Skywalker with his lightsaber ignited, and during the Death Star trench run. This finally leads him to realize that he has a son, and proudly declares that he will be mine. It will all be mine. So that was the Separatist commander and scientist who teamed up to become the next General Grievous. Thanks so much for watching, really hope you enjoyed the video. Cheers guys, hope to see you in the next one.